Welcome back to the channel, fight fans. Episode 13, Underdogs Overeem versus Augustus Sakai. Let me scroll to the top of my notes here. Just a quick recap on last week. Ended up finishing with a silver badge, top 40%. Went 4 of 4 with tips, so pretty good there. Lost the multi by a leg. We did lose a fight though with Ankalaev and Kutlava. To my best pick of the night, Magny by decision. You know, he looked super good everywhere. Dominated Lawler. Put a pace on him similar to what Colby and RDA did, and yeah, just couldn't match that. So yeah, although I did tip all 4 fighters correct, that was the only method I got correct, and hence being my best pick, even though it was short odds. Worst pick, kind of hard to select one considering I did tip all 4 fighters right, but I'm going to say Rakic by KO. As good as he looked, in terms of cardio, in terms of wrestling, the KO never really looked entirely on. Didn't have Smith terribly hurt at any point in particular. But yeah, impressive win for Rakic. I'm looking forward to his next fight, and also looking forward to where Anthony Smith goes from here as well. He's mentioned maybe going back down to middleweight. There's be plenty of interesting fights for him down there. So yeah, interested to see the trajectories of both of those guys. To the bottom of this main card now, we've got Thiago Moises versus Jalen Turner. Moises the favourite at the bookies and on verdict, 1.55 times on verdict and $1.46. Jalen Turner 2.81 times on verdict and $2.65 underdog. Moises 13 and 4 as a pro, Turner 9 and 5. Classic kind of striker versus grappler matchup. Jalen Turner's a guy I've kept my eye on very closely since his Dana White Contender Series win, and he's earning of a UFC contract. And you know, I forgave his debut loss. He lost by knockout to Vicente Luque. Pretty ruthless for the UFC to give an exciting young prospect Luque in their debut. But you know, since then I haven't seen anything that I really like, to be honest. He's won 2 of his following 3 fights. TKOs to Callum Potter and Kulibauer. But you know, he should win those. Callum Potter's decent everywhere, but good nowhere. I don't rate Callum Potter highly. And then, you know, that loss mixed in there, decision to Frivola, not that great. Moises kind of uncertain to me as well, but he does have a really good ground game, and we've seen him battle through adversity, which is something I like. Johnson was really tearing him up on the feet the first round of his last fight, but he fought back to win that one by a second round submission. In terms of the striking in this one, Turner will have a slight edge. He's so long at lightweight, 6'3", 77-inch reach. But his wrestling, you know, not crash hot. Frivola took him down 4 times, and you know, that's a clear path for Moises in this one as well. You know, take him down, grind out a decision, or work for a submission. So out of those 2, I'm gonna pick Thiago Moises via decision. I think Jalen can hang around on the ground, use his long limbs to kind of protect himself from the submission, but essentially just get dominated on the mat. Pretty short odds, paying 2.76 times for Moises via the decision, being the favourite on verdict, but I'm going to be rolling with that to open up the main card. Going along to the next one, Zalim Emadaev versus Michel Pereira. Zalim Emadaev, underdog on verdict 2.18 times, and you know, these boys are picking at the bookies $1.90 each. Michel, however, slight favourite on verdict 1.84 times. Emadaev 8 and 2 as a pro. Pereira 23-11, 2 no contests. Pereira here for mine, you know, not with a large amount of confidence, but I will be taking him. Emadaev just hasn't shown me enough in the UFC to warrant picking him. Young guy, green, and it shows. Only 10 pro fights. You know, he was highly touted before his UFC debut. 8-0 when he got signed, all 8 wins via knockout, 5 in the first round, but he has not translated that knockout game on the regional scene into the UFC. In his debut back there, he gets decision by Max Griffin, not a great loss. You know, to give credit where credit's due, he was winning most of the striking exchanges in that fight, but that's something I'd expect, and he really showed no wrestling ability at all. He got taken down 6 out of the 11 times throughout the fight. Not something I want to see. He then gets knocked out by Danny Roberts in the second round of their fight, in which he was losing most of the striking exchanges. So, you know, MMA math doesn't work. I'm not an advocate for it, I get it, but Pereira flattened Danny Roberts with 6 strikes in their fight. And, you know, I do think although Emadaev has the reach advantage here, Pereira will be the more dominant figure in there. He's really, really big. Everyone that's seen kind of Michel's highlights, he's a monster at 170. And yeah, that's going to be how it's going to look. Tristan Connolly did show a massive gap in Pereira's game, which was kind of similar to what Griffin did to Imadaev. The grappling heavy fight, that's a spot where Pereira's not so strong and confident. The draining clinch game kind of showed us Pereira's cardio issues as well, which is always going to be a problem with someone that fights so explosively. And for that reason, I thought Diego was going to have the perfect blueprint to beat Michel, but instead Pereira comes out in that fight more methodical with his strikes, beating Diego to the punch, getting 2 takedowns of his own, whilst defending all 6 of Diego's, and winning that fight. He got DQ'd in that fight. He needs Sanchez on the ground, but he showed enough to me in that fight regarding evolution, game plan change, a level of versatility that I haven't seen from Imadaev. As for the actual result, losing via DQ, outcomes like that are just going to come as a risky run when you play Pereira. Entertaining, but volatile as fuck, and at the same time as being entertaining, and really, really erratic. Can't have him with much confidence, which I kind of mentioned earlier as well. I do think these guys go to war. Think it's going to be an entertaining fight. Both really strong strikers, but I'm going to lean Pereira for his versatility, kind of the ability that he's shown us to offensively wrestle, combined with Imadaev's blatant lack of defense. And as good as Imadaev's boxing is, he very rarely uses kicks, typically only strikes for the head, which Michel doesn't do. He kicks a lot, likes to go to the body, likes to go to the legs, which gives him another edge as well. And he's so kind of unorthodox and unpredictable. I'm pretty sure he doesn't even know what strikes or angles he's going to come from next. So how is Zaleem going to know? To my pick, I think that someone gets finished in there. Although only 3 losses via finish between both of these guys in 46 combined pro fights, they're both finishers in their own right. And these styles match up very nicely to see someone go out. And I'm seeing one outcome with some massive odds that I can't go past. Michel Pereira paying 86.14 times to win via submission. I don't care how unlikely that might sound, that's value. 6 pro wins via submission. He has a massive BJJ and wrestling advantage in this one, plus the initiative to get the fights to the ground. He took Diego and Tristan Connolly down twice in each of those fights, and Imadaev looks completely out of his comfort zone on the mat. And if it gets to the canvas, Michel always looking for a way to get you out of there. So I love that play. You can't go wrong with the odds. Almost guarantee yourself a strap on verdict if you take that. And we cash that, and I'll be taking in the first round. 5 of Michel's 6 career subs have been in the first frame. And I'm expecting fireworks from the bell, so an early finish, not a bad call regardless. Alrighty. Next fight along, Sijara Eubanks, Carol Rosa. Sijara Eubanks, the favourite on verdict 1.3 times, but the bookie underdog $2.10. Carol Rosa, considerable underdog 4.28 times on verdict, coming back as the slight favourite at the bookmakers $1.72. Eubanks 6-4 as a pro, Rosa 13-3. And like I mentioned, big underdog for Carol Rosa on verdict, and I'm dumbfounded as to why. The betting odds are far better justified in my opinion. The big part of this fight, the thing that will determine who wins this fight, is how well will Carol Rosa's takedown defense hold up. So far, really, really good. 100% takedown defense in the UFC. Defended all 5 of Procopio's takedowns in her first UFC fight. And Procopio is not great, but she's not a slouch either. She's a Brazilian as well, good BJJ, and was 6-0 going into that fight. Then in Carol Rosa's next fight, defended both of Vanessa Mello's takedowns. Both of those shots kind of shallow, kind of desperate. She was getting beaten up on the feet. So read into that what you will, but she did defend both of them. Eubanks, I'll talk about her briefly. She's not high level. She has good wins over Roxanne Modafferi, Lauren Murphy, but I do not rate her in herself highly at all. Her striking, horrible. Doesn't mix it up at all. Only aims for the head and just pressures you and brawls you. Wide wing punches, rarely kicks. I don't like it. It's not pretty. And I don't think it's effective against good strikers. One thing that she is though, and has to be credit for, is her gritty, tenacious grappling. She secured takedowns in all of her UFC fights to date, and then she does look to get off work there once she's on the ground. Pretty big ground strike numbers in all of her fights, so I'll credit her that. What she isn't though is a BJJ girl. 0 career wins via sub. She just likes to stay busy with the pressure down there, pressure and strikes. But yeah, for my pick, I cannot be taking Sijara Eubanks, especially as a 1.3 times favourite. Cal Rosa has some of the nicest striking in the 135 pound division. She could go to the body more. Pretty much 30% striker to the legs, 70% upstairs, and only 10% to the body. But you know, between the legs and the head, I like that amount of versatility, and she is volume. Volume, crazy stuff. Landed 171 strikes on debut, over 100 attempts per round in that fight, and then followed it up in her last one, landing 120, in which she dominated Vanessa Mello, outlanded her by 75 strikes. You know, so you can just get an idea of the numbers from that. Pretty filled out of the weight class, similar to Sijara, but also strong in the clinch, has that good takedown defense. She fights underhooks, reverses her opponents against the cage, and keeps it in that stand-up battle because that's where she likes it. However, you know, the grappling is where Sijara is going to have her moments. So if Rosa can keep this a pure striking affair, she should outpoint this by an absolute landslide. I do like to see that she has some ability in the clinch though. Similarly, Rosa also has 2 wins via submission and some BJJ credentials. Gives me a little more confidence as well that if Sijara does get this to the ground, blemish that 100% takedown defense, you know, Carol's not going to be a fish out of water down there. She's going to be able to get this back up to a more comfortable striking range for her, or, you know, throw something offensive down on the mat to make Sijara think twice. So I'll be backing that with Rosa as a big underdog. I'm thinking a volume decision. Sijara's tough, never been finished. But that verdict outcome only 5.66 times, and with Rosa already being a 4.29 time underdog, there's actually no value there, and I may as well take a punt on a finish and still cash the solid 4.29 time multiplier if she does win by a decision regardless. So the fact that I think she'll have the striking advantage, I'm gonna risk the TKO at a big 39.09 times. And I'll also play that in the 3rd round. Give her enough time to kind of accumulate, mount the damage on Sijara, assert that jab, them straight attacks, bust up Sijara's nose, and, you know, mount some work on her. And kind of a bit of history to back that up. 2 of Rosa's 4 career knockouts have been in the 3rd round. So that goes into my thinking with that a little bit more too. Telling you what, man, we cashed that Pereira and that Rosa pick. We're going to be holding a belt for sure. Co-main event time. The rebooking of OSP versus Alonzo Menafield, and the odds have changed. OSP 1.65 times on verdict now, the $2.04 underdog at the bookies. Menafield 2.53 times underdog on verdict. Favourite at the bookies, $1.74. OSP 24-14 as a pro, Menafield 9-1. I am really happy they rebooked this. That card a fortnight ago took a huge hit losing this fight. Hoping both guys make it to the scales, to the cage, because yeah, we've seen a lot of rebooked fights not get carried through recently. And like I was alluding to before, OSP was the 1.4 times favourite on verdict on their initial booking. Now you're getting a 1.65 times. Essentially my reasoning very similar as to what it was in that video. I do really like Alonzo, talented, entertaining, but very one-dimensional. Just kind of a striker, and that cardio is a problem. Being that big, that strong, that powerful, and using explosive movements in everything he does, he's going to struggle to have more than a round of solid output, no matter how much time and effort he's put into his conditioning. You know, he doesn't kick that often, and he doesn't kick when he's tired. He throws one punch at a time, much slower. Like I've talked about before, OSP, another guy with questionable conditioning, but he's got the experience advantage. He's come up against everybody at 205, and he's been hurt in there, and he's rallied for wins. We've seen it lots and lots with OSP. That resilience, which I cannot say for Alonzo as of yet, being so green, 10 pro fights. And yeah, OSP actually really durable, owning 2 knockout losses in his career. He's fought some insane strikers. His last time at heavyweight against Ben Rothwell, he couldn't put him out. I know Alonzo hits hard, but I do like that fact that OSP has a good chin. In saying that, Alonso will be at his most dangerous on the feet, and OSP should get this to the mat for sure. Super crafty on the deck, 8 career wins via submission, multiple methods, and I haven't seen anything out of Alonso with regards to jiu-jitsu, which doesn't mean he doesn't have some ability, but we know OSP's good there, and he's going to have an advantage. I'm just unsure whether OSP is going to be able to get Menafield down. Menafield defended 9 out of the 10 Devon Clark takedowns, even when he was super tired, which is impressive. Although it came at the expense of his own offense, but you know, it didn't go to the ground. All things aside, I'm taking OSP again, and I'm taking him by submission in the second round. The exact same pick as what I had 2 weeks ago. And again, not great value on verdict, only paying 3.36 times. Actually much better value in the knockout at 16.0 times. OSP has more career KOs than subs, but I feel like that's Alonso's playground in this one, and it's going to be in OSP's best interest to grapple, get it to the ground. I'm seeing Alonso burn out again. Like I mentioned, his frame, the way he fights, it's not sustainable. St. Preux using the clinch to wear on him, get this down. Even potentially lock up a shoulder choke in standing and wrenches to the mat. I don't mind that either. You know, I'm not a fan that Alonso lost his last fight against a bloke like Devon Clark, and he's now fighting OSP, a guy higher up the charts with all the experience in the world. It's not the right trend. I think it's the wrong fight for a young guy. And so he's not young, he's 32, but in a green guy who I think is exciting and could, you know, sell main cards. Not the main event, but, you know, be on main cards and be a bit of a draw. Anyway, I digress. Main event, Alistair Overeem versus Augusto Sakai. Alistair Overeem, 1.25 times favourite on verdict, also represented the bookmakers $1.53. Augusto Sakai, 5.06 times, big underdog on verdict, slightly less of an underdog at the bookmakers, $2.46. Overeem, 46-18, won no contest as a pro. Sakai, 15-1 and 1 draw. I'll start with Sakai. You know, he's got ability, it can't be questioned. He has that knockout power, and he also has the volume to be competitive across 3 rounds, and a striking style that scores well with the judges. You know, he mixes up his angles. He had previously been a headhunter, which is something I'd noted, but in that Blagoy fight, 19% of his strikes were to the legs, another 35% to the body. And I like to see that, you know, you don't want to be a one-dimensional fighter, especially if your style is striking and volume. Going to different parts of the body sets up your other shots. Just the best way to go about it. He also has really solid takedown defense, 83%, which I'm predicting he's going to need in this one, because we have seen Overeem use the wrestling far more in the last year or two. In fact, since kind of he lost that fight to Curtis Blades and ended up joining Blades at the Elevation fight team, Overeem secured a takedown in every fight he's had, except the fight against Alexei Oleinik, which is totally understandable with Alexei being so dangerous with jiu-jitsu and Alistair having such an obvious striking advantage. Why would he take Alexei down? And he won that fight by first round knockout. And you know, him having that wrestling and utilising it more so now is so important, because it gives him another facet to his game, another thing for his opponent to consider when they close distance, and it allows him to be freer with his striking as well. Come up from different angles, uppercuts, knees, get that kickboxing game going again, because you know Overeem's striking's top notch. One of the most decorated fighters in MMA history with that kickboxing background. And you know, one of the best strikers we've seen with regards to strikes landed versus strikes absorbed. And it's funny because he's been knocked out 14 times in his career, devastatingly on some occasions, but I cannot make the case that he's as chinny as everyone makes out to be. You know, on that resume you see 14 knockouts, it looks horrible, but I still think this man can take a shot. You know, he took 88 clean shots from Jairzinho, for God's sake, until the last one put him out with a few seconds left, 24.5 minutes in. Again, in his last fight, hurt from Walt Harris in the first round. Given plenty of chances by Mergliotta to survive, I get it, but he did survive, and then he won that fight. So, I don't know if you can hear me getting excited, but to my pick, I really like Alistair Overeem. I think he wins this fight. This being an Overeem fight, my heart will likely be in my mouth at some stage. You know, Sakai's young, hungry, will look to land big shots, and you know, the Reem will likely have to absorb some damage. But if he survives, I think he'll turn the tide, and he'll turn heavily in his favour, same as in that Walt Harris fight. And I think Walt Harris is more dangerous of a striker than Sakai, for sure. Like I did mention, I did enjoy seeing Sakai mix up the strikes more in his fight against Blagoy, but he did only have 10 minutes of good fight. That third round, Blagoy was coming, and Sakai would likely have lost that frame, and therefore the fight, if he didn't save himself from a mid-round takedown with blatant fence grab that went unnoticed and he didn't get penalised for, and ended up winning that fight 29-28, and a round and a half of ground control time for Blagoy probably would have seen it swing in his favour. And then there's a large asterisk over his other UFC decision win against Arlovsky, outlanded by 32 strikes by Andre in that one, but still managed to get the nod. Reem won't slow down, showed us, like I said, 24.5 good active minutes against Jairzinho. Definitely has the ability to be a smarter striker than Sakai in there, and he's got volume too, you know. And then rely on that wrestling game that I feel is going to be easier to exploit when Sakai gets tired. Sakai gets tired. Jesus. Like I said, we'll sweat on this pick at some stage, but taking the Reem, wanted to play a decision at 5.06 times, but when I was looking more closely, you know, I just thought Alistair's a finisher through and through. 46 pro wins, only 4 of those by decision. So at 5.06 times, I just couldn't entertain those odds when I'd expect him to be so dominant later on a tired and sluggish Sakai through the championship rounds. So off the back of that reasoning, off the back of that thinking, and the fact that I think this fight will end up on the mat, I'm going to roll with a submission, 24.33 times. It's a long shot, you know, banking on that Pride Reem showing up. He hasn't notched a sub since 2009. But he was looking for angles on the ground against Harris in his last fight. It ended up just being easier to pound him out rather. But I don't mind the outcome. 17 submissions on Overeem's resume. Just the fact that he's scored none for ages. So yeah, that's what I'll be doing. I'm going to play that in the 4th round. Could be earlier. Or, you know, he gets knocked out. Fuck's sake, I don't know. But yeah, 4th round, Sakai's tired, takedown, choke, armbar. Let's go, Overeem. To the bets, multi per annum, 1 win, 11 losses, 28.099 unit of profit. Yeah, only hit 1. That's gross. Let's turn it around. We've got changing up a little bit. I've always kind of throw some weird legs in there. Some fighters by a specific method, or fights to go the distance or not. This one I'm just going to take 5 guys straight up. Muniz, Pereira, Rosa, OSP and Overeem, all straight up, $41.43. You have all the reasoning there for all those other fighters, Pereira, Rosa, OSP, Overeem, through my analysis already, except for Muniz. So let's talk about that. Dangerous grappler. He's up against Bartosz Verbinski. Both guys pretty good records, 17-4-18-3, pretty sure off the top of my head. But they are the intermediate bracket fighter. I think Muniz is dangerous enough. Bartosz being such a wrestling heavy decision style, or that being his style, I think Muniz will get all the opportunities to lock up a submission here. He's definitely the more dangerous BJJ practitioner. And then, you know, in the striking department, both guys very, very similar. That first fight for Muniz against Antonio Ojoyo, he's a fantastic striker, and that was a tough matchup for Muniz. So I'll forgive him for that loss. We look to go ahead here. Verbinski did win his last fight against Darren Stewart, but Verbinski was busted up in that one, and it wasn't as cut and dry as what the judges' scorecards made it out to be. So yeah, I think if this goes to a decision, Bartosz might sneak it. He is a decision specialist, but his way to do that is ground game, and Muniz is a very, very tricky customer down there. So all the best to Verbinski if he can survive that. And then maybe he deserves to be the $1.60 favourite, but in my eyes, he doesn't. He should be the underdog, and that's why I think it's value. So throw on that leg in there. No single plays yet. Trying to get this out early in the week. I'm not sure if I'll get a video up for next week, but it is what it is. If I do, I'll talk to you guys then. Links to all my socials, kind of Twitter, Instagram, and my Verdict account. My usernames will be in the description of this video. Check them out. Follow me on any of those Verdict related content, what I'm seeing. You'll obviously see what I'm scoring on Fight Night through Verdict. And then yeah, I might release some single players through Instagram, Twitter. So you don't want to miss out on any of those. Even though we are negative 1.3 units on single plays. Negative 2.3 units on single plays as of last week. Thanks, Hannah Cyphers. Should have knocked her out in the first round. That would have been much easier than coming out and being sloppy Hannah Cyphers that we all know and love in the second round. Anyway, catch up.